This is now the second episode with us live in Versailles in France, which is very near Paris, place with the pointy thing made out of metal. We today are again with my father, Richard Ballard, who is on my right, and we have Lee, who is my sidekick, but just as valuable as I am. We have to stop. We can't do that. I can't do that. Okay. Right, okay. Right, he's put his headphones on now. Look, can you not put that in? That's fucking outrageous.
That'll be a blooper. That's for the blooper reel.
Okay.
Right.
50 in Coping again today is live from Versailles in France, right next to Paris. And on my right is my father, Richard Ballard, and on my left is Lee, who you all know. We are going to look at something that's going to happen to all of us. And obviously the whole premise of this podcast is 50 and coping. Well, my father, he's 86, right? So he's seen a lot of things. He's lived through a lot of things and a lot of changes, but also he's also gone through the aging process and can sell himself about what he's done and where he's gone and how he's coped. And I think that's important. So, this time, we want to look at old age, how it progresses, how it changes your mentality, how it changes your thinking. Can I ask, I'm going to start by asking you a question. When was the first time, what age roughly did you think, Jesus, I'm getting old?
Well, last week.
Last week? What, not before that?
Well, no, I mean, it's something that creeps up on you. And you don't want to announce to yourself that you are old. I announced that I was 86 yesterday to a nurse who came to take a blood sample.
Right.
And she said, that's nothing. I've just been to see a woman who's 110. And so, I took that as a...
In all seriousness?
Yeah.
100, was she joking, do you think?
No, she said that she still has all her faculties. She still lives alone. She still cooks for herself.
Wow. That's amazing, isn't it?
And I find it difficult to cook for myself. Lots of evenings I say, all right, I'll have bread and cheese because
Right.
it's easier.
Yeah.
And then I have a banana because that's easy.
Right.
And then I have another beer because that's easy. And then I go to sleep because that's even easier.
Yeah.
No, but you don't think I'm getting old. When my father was my age, he died.
He's
He'd been dead 14 years. Yeah. See, and you do tend to lose the thread a bit when
lose
you're
the
86,
train of
but-
your... So, okay, my question is, though, 50 really played on my mind.
Yeah.
Right. So to the point where I went to Lee and said, we need to start a podcast, man,
Yeah.
because this is doing my head in. As you all know, 50 this year was a big thing, but then the day of it, we did a show and I realised nothing had changed.
Yep.
I'm exactly the same human being as I was. But I have to say that, 50 now, you get out of bed and you groan and your hip hurts. Well, if you're me, right? And you start thinking about the fact of the matter is how long you're going to last. I did have that thought the other day.
Yeah.
Do you dwell on how, how...
No, you teach yourself not to, because if you did, you'd go balmy.
Yeah.
You wonder how much time you've got left. And I've dealt with that so far by teaching myself new tricks, as it were.
Yeah.
I used to be a history teacher, and now I would like to think that I was something of a historian, because I've written a few books and,
Right, well,
and they've been published.
let's quantify that, right? You've written a book on the French Revolution, right? You've written a book about where you used to live, the Springs and all that, right? But just recently, you've written a book about Laveau, who was the actual architect of some of Versailles, the beginning of it, right? But of course, which Louis?
14th.
Louis the 14th, yes, I knew that. I've been saying the 13th all this time. Yeah, because I'm just an ill-educated bump. But you've written a book about a man who basically nobody knows anything about because he died a pauper, did he not?
He died bankrupt, yes.
Yeah, but the thunder was taken from his achievements by the King of France. Right. So,
That's right, yeah.
can I ask you this? Does writing the books keep you alive?
Yes,
Because you have a purpose,
yes.
and you genuinely believe that.
Well, I had a marvellous purpose in the circumstances in which I do my research and my writing. The story is that 4 years ago, I went into the bookshop up in the chateau.
That's the Palace of Versailles, the chateau,
Yes.
which is, look, there. Right.
It's 400 yards away from where I live.
Yeah.
And I asked for two biographies, one of the gardener, André Le Nôtre,
Yeah.
and the other one of the architect of what's called the envelope of the Palais de Versailles, which is the centerpiece that looks out over the gardens.
Right.
And his name is Louis Leveau. And the lady I met said, well, you can have Le Nôtre, here it is, but Louis Leveau has not had a biographer so far. And laughingly, having just finished another book, I said, well, shall I write it? And she said, do you mean that? And I said, well, I could. And so she took me by the hand, which was encouraging, to the conservators' library in a building called the Grand Commun, which is right by the Palais, which was constructed in 1683 by a man called Jules Audouin Mansart, who was the replacement for Louis Leveau. And the lady said, he wants to write a book about Leveau. And so the person in charge of the library said, fine, here are some books, here's a space, come whenever you like.
So they gave you a desk
They gave me a desk
at the Palace of Versailles.
and they gave me all the facilities I needed, including all the libraries in France, which provided me with articles and everything I needed.
Do you think they did it like this will sound puerile, but did they do a background check? Did they look into who you were?
No.
Because you've got a proven track record of writing books and you know,
Well,
they're
they
published.
just took me on, yeah.
Right, so, who's your publisher, Sword in Hand?
Pen and Sword,
Oh, Pen and Sword, sorry.
who have an office in Yorkshire.
In Yorkshire. Okay, well, I mean, okay, that's what you're doing now. I want to regress.
So that motivated me.
Well, the motivation to, I mean, I don't know. I feel bad saying this. The motivation to stay alive is not, you know, is many things, but the lead is having something to achieve.
Yes. Well, I mean, I make the comparison with my father, who, when he retired from the civil service, didn't have another interest.
Right.
And by the time he was 72, he'd had enough.
Right.
And I think he died of boredom, honestly.
Is
Right.
it consciously a motivation to stay alive, or is it just a motivation to remain active, which then means you stay alive?
Again, both. Yeah, the motivation is to be interested, and not just to sort of live from day to day.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're writing a book, that means you've got to dig around a lot, and so one thing leads to another, and you end the day thinking, well, what I'll do tomorrow is this.
But also, I mean, it's not just sitting at a computer or whatever. It's also the interaction with all the people that you meet.
Yeah.
You know, there's the people that facilitate your ability to obtain the information you need.
Yes.
So then you form new relationships, and it seems to me that you are actually friends with these people from the Grand Commune, which is in the Palace of Versailles, which I think is a huge deal. I mean, I don't, you know.
And one of the things I find, especially since I've been ill, is how kind people are. I didn't realise that before.
No.
I didn't realise that people actually did worry about you and look in on you and see you're all right. I live in a building which has something like 10 flats.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I knew them all, but I'm on nodding terms with them all.
Right.
And a lot of them are young people who say, you've only got to say if you can't go shopping.
And they'll go and do it for you.
We'll go and do it for you.
That's amazing.
And they do.
Well, speaking as your son, that's amazing that you have that backup. because obviously I live in London or Hertfordshire, and I can only get to you once in a while. And you know, look, I have to say as well that we left England at midnight. Yeah, and we have to be back in England within 24 hours.
Yep.
So, you know, because we all have obligations.
Yeah, and I can tell you how much this is appreciated.
Well, I'm in heaven. You know, we've come here to talk to a man who has lived his whole life through knowledge and experience. And to be brutally honest, you know, I'm lucky as somebody who makes podcasts to have you to reference. And I do reference you a lot. You know, this isn't about me coming here to, you know, shine a light on my father. But, you know, I've talked about you a lot in all these podcasts. And so here you are on it. I'd like to take you back to the end of Westminster School. So you're looking at retirement. So what age did you retire?
60.
Okay, 60. So you've been retired now 26 years. Right. And, okay, we need to reference my mother. Okay, my mother had multiple sclerosis, as I've told you, and it's a horrible thing. But you were able, because of David Summerscale, who was the headmaster of Westminster, to look after your wife and do your job, and then retire at 60. Now, I don't know whether I'm allowed to talk about this, but we will. Right, you basically, you had huge amounts of debt all through your life. But for the first time, after you received your lump sum, you didn't owe anyone anything.
No, the lump sum covered the debts, yes.
Yeah, okay. But now, the only reason I bring that up is when you've retired, I have no frame of reference. I will never be able to retire. I will never be able to stop working. I don't have a pension, right? But that's why I am looking at becoming a psychotherapist, right? So I can sit down for a living instead of throwing metal about or dancing around in tattoo shops. When you look at retirement from the left-hand side of it, before you get there, what do you feel? What do you think about it?
Well, it's frightening because in both our situations, you don't know how you're going to manage. And illness costs.
Yeah.
And your poor mother had a lot of needs,
Yep.
which had to be satisfied. For example, if you're pretty well completely disabled, as she was, you need a special bed
Yep.
that will go up and down when you press a button.
You know, the hospital bed kind of scenario.
Well, no, it wasn't a hospital bed like the one I have here. It's a rather sophisticated thing which sits you up and lays you down, and
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, and she needed that, and she needed. You mentioned before the special food she made for herself.
Yeah.
Well, the ingredients were costly.
Yeah.
And she also, she won't mind me saying this, used to find sherry helped a lot. So there was a lot of sherry.
Good. I remember lots of bottles of Tio Pepe around the place.
Yeah,
And
well,
why
it was
wouldn't you?
necessary.
Well, why wouldn't you?
And you know, I joined in.
I have to say this, right? I remember, you know the cup she used to drink out of with the straw. I remember filling that with sherry, or not filling it, you know, but there was a beaker and it had a top and it had a straw, and it was almost like she was embarrassed to ask for it. But fuck that, you know, you're living in a prison of your own self.
Yeah.
You need some kind of, you know, relaxing, and also it helped her gag reflex. You know, the whole thing. The problem was that she could not eat for herself properly after a while and doing all that. Now, if sherry is what you need to cope, then Jesus,
You have it. Yeah.
kick off, son. But sherry costs money. Beds cost money. How did you afford all that?
Don't know. We did. And I say we advisedly. It wasn't up to me. We were a couple. We'd been married 37 years. We'd had our bad times and our good times.
Yeah.
But you cope because you have to. There isn't a choice.
No.
You can't let someone not have what she really needs when she's quite incapable of doing things herself.
Yeah.
And you knew that, I knew that, we all knew it. So the idea of retirement was a bit frightening.
Yeah. How does right? So you, I mean, I don't want to go into your finances in and outs, but you live off your pensions. One from the clergy, one from the teacher.
I have a teacher's pension, I have a clergy pension, I have the old age pension.
Okay. Well, look,
Which turns out into now on my own, a very good package.
Yeah.
I mean, I can afford things.
Like what? For beer and everything that we're drinking.
Food.
Food. What, the luxury that is food?
Yeah.
There's a restaurant around the corner called Le Petit Marquis, and I like going there.
Well, I've been there several times with you. I annoyed you last time though because I paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you might have found something in the morning after.
Oh dear. Oh yeah. Oh, then you paid me back. That's right. Oh, you can't even pay for your own dad's dinner. Okay. So right, you've got to retirement and you're looking at what to do. Is that an issue? So
No, it's not, because I knew I was going to be a nurse.
yeah, you had your hands full.
Yeah, and where we went to first was a mistake. We bought a little flat, but
Where was that?
in Sussex somewhere, Arundel.
Arundel. Oh yeah.
And we tried to expand it by buying a elaborate garden shed, which gave us another room. But we didn't like it.
Right.
Neither of us liked it.
Yeah.
So I went to the person that I rented it from, which was a house agent, and I said, "Look, I can't cope with this." And she said, "Well, the only option is to give it up." So I rang the church commissioners, who had given me a 90% mortgage to buy this thing.
Right.
And they say, well, it's the answer's simple. You sell it and you rent one of our gaffs.
Right.
And so I rented a not unpleasant bungalow in Hadley in Essex.
Yeah, that was a nice place.
And they did it up for us.
East Sussex, though, right? Petworth type place, was it?
Well, Arundel was the first place, which is not far from Petworth.
Right.
And then we went to Hadley in Essex,
Right, Essex.
which is Constable country, which I liked.
Oh, Pointage. No.
And they did it up for disability.
Right.
So we had a bathroom with a non-slip floor.
A wet room and all that. Yeah.
And that was all right. And it was there after 2 years that she died.
Yeah.
I don't want to say she passed away or she passed. She actually died.
Yeah, she did.
And in Ipswich Hospital, which was
It was Ipswich.
not the ideal place because they weren't specialists, and
No.
there we are.
Are you okay to discuss that?
Yep.
Okay. Right. I've said this, right, that when I saw her in that little bed, no, the big bed, and her being so little, she'd made a decision to go.
Well, the point was that a social worker came and said, look, when you get home, she'll have this device in her stomach, and a carer will come in the morning and feed her, and a carer will come in the evening and feed her, and a carer will come in the middle of the day and wash her. And the carer had said all this with her hearing it.
Yeah.
And the next morning, I was rung up by the sister, who said, "Could you come over?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I'd rather not tell you." And the penny didn't drop, so I drove over there, and she died. And I think, and you think too, that she just didn't want to live like that.
Well, I was there the day before, right, as far as I remember, and I've told this story, so we won't dwell on it. It's, right. So basically, she made the decision that it was time, right, and we all coped with that, however we did, right. So then, you've been married for 37 years. You're retired. How? Well, I remember how you coped with that.
Badly.
I'm not saying that in every way, shape, or form, but you did the right. I need to revert to form. So you went and did the Chelsea thing. And I think that was valuable in as much as that you saw that it was something you didn't want to do. And also, you know, the guy, the vicar there, presumably, is he still around? Or?
I believe he is. Yeah.
Okay, well, I won't say anything then. But the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, you do tattoos? Doesn't that spread HIV?" That's right. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Right. That's what you're dealing with. Is that okay? Right.
Well, it's true.
Well, it is, and you know, he wasn't being malicious or anything. That's just what he thought. So you know, you're in a wealthy area. People are
Not off.
Yeah, I mean, people are very privileged, and God, don't you know it?
Yeah, but to give it its due, there was a lady there called Sheila Donaldson Walters, who kept the registers of the church,
Right.
in a beautiful italic hand.
Oh, okay.
And I said, "That's a beautiful italic hand." And she said, "Well, I am a professional artist." And she said, "I see you do drawings. If you would like to pass by my studio on a Thursday morning when I'm free and bring something worth drinking, I'll give you a crit." And
Wait.
and
I'll give you a critique.
critique.
Right. Let's just spell that out for anyone.
And so she did.
Yeah.
And when I first arrived in France, I was doing my little drawings,
Yeah.
which are now gathered under my bed in boxes.
Yeah.
There was a woman who ran a gallery who I got to know, and she said, "Look, I'd like to give you a show." And because of Sheila, I had the confidence to do that,
Yeah.
and had several shows. And now I illustrate my books with my drawings, and that's a sort of satisfying thing. You know, the things that I started with my dad bringing the comic books in from the American hospital bore fruit in that way. And it's been very satisfying. I can't do it as I used to anymore because I'm beginning to get cataracts. But for the next book, your niece Lydia is going to come with her camera and take the photographs I need, and I'll make drawings out of them.
Is she?
For the next one.
Excellent.
So what this amounts to is that I passed from being an anxious widower with nothing to do to somebody who's got more to do than I can cope with because I don't sleep and have to sleep in the day.
Yeah.
And I have the backup of this wonderful library and the friendships that that's brought me. And my neighbours, who were all very nice chaps and ladies. And there's one who, if my computer goes wrong, I ring him up at work and say, "Can you pass by on your way home?" And he comes in and sorts me out.
So you've got yourself, right? I hate to bang on, but you've got yourself a little community of people who help you out. Community. It's all about community.
And without that, I mean, when I was first ill with what I've got, I'm living not far from the Marie Curie Institute, which tells you what I've got.
Yeah.
I was on my own, and there was no backup, as I thought. But then there was overnight.
So you learn when you think you're alone, you know, as this, you know, you're an Englishman in France. You've been here a long time, okay, and you can get by with the lingo and all that business, right? You have a French friend who, Lucy, who's your companion, who looks after you and you look after her. You know, there is a thing, but the more important thing is the people who you think are on the peripherals of your life that help you out. Because it's an obvious, everyone has their number two, you know, like, so everyone has the person that they lean on or whatever, whoever that is, be that a girlfriend, be that a friend, be that a cousin, be that a whatever. But now you've realised that actually people do want to help.
Well, just sitting down in the street, drawing a picture, brings people around you who show an interest in you. When I lived in Tronsac, which is a town in the southwest of France, I made a guide of the town. With little drawings and paintings, and Lucy wrote the text, and it still sells.
It does.
People used to sort of look over my shoulder while I was doing it, and I remember one conversation a man said, "Oh, I've heard of you," and I said, "Ah, je suis fameux," and he said, "Non, vous êtes connu,"
Connu? Qu'est-ce que c'est?
It means you're known.
Oh, you're known. You're not famous, son, but you're known.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It doesn't mean you're a con. It means you're connu.
Is that the word for that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
We had that conversation, did we not, fellas, on the way down?
Yeah.
Nobody knew what that was. Okay.
But you see they see an elderly man, as I was then. I'd like to say
Of course, you're rejuvenated now.
that's what you could say. Now I'm an old man, but then I was only elderly.
Okay.
And they come and take notice, and they show an interest in what you're doing. I thought at the time that the part of it was being astonished that you could still do something when you're over 70, but no, it's different.
think that's
It's
it.
not.
Do you think that's more French than you'd get that in Britain? Do you think you'd get that reaction in England? I'm not sure that you would.
Well, I never did draw in the street in England. I
No,
think.
but I'm not sure that.
I don't think the English people would be that interested.
Maybe if you were down in Brighton or somewhere that's got like an artistic.
Or you're back in Somerset, or doing that something in the street. But
I can't imagine people in Britain would.
do you know
Yeah.
what
Anyway.
I remember?
No, I think you're right. It is a French thing, because, galleries here are rather more important than they are in England.
Yeah, no, that's
People
absolutely
like
true.
drawings and they like paintings.
Like artwork.
And after all, this is quite a historic place.
Oh, is it? Oh,
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah. Right. So when we came to visit you, we being me and Sid, my wife, we were walking around with you, and all of a sudden, this man come out of this wooden double glazed door, like this wooden, not double glazed, wooden door with glass panels, and threw the doors open, said, "Richard, oh, ça va, blah blah," and all the Frenchness. Right, and then he goes, "Oh, come in." And he goes, "Well, I've got my son," and he went, "Yeah, no, come in." And we sat in this complete stranger to us, his house, and he was in awe of you. This was an artist, and we sat there, and his wife came back.
Louis, yeah.
Yeah, and and I'm thinking, who the fucking hell is this? But then, gave me a drink, gave Sid a drink, was interested in who we were because of you. And, all my life I've lived in your shadow in a good way. People want to talk to you. People want to know what you do and who you are. And, that's an amazing thing. I've struggled with that my whole life. I want to be a rock star. I want to be a this. I want to be a blah, blah. Right? But you didn't want to, how do I put this? You didn't want to be anything. You just did what you did. Do you see what I mean? You've never had the aspirations to do, things, but you did. And you made things happen. And that's where I got that from. We've made this podcast happen.
Yeah, but I was lucky to be in the right place a lot of the time.
Luck
Yeah,
or
I think,
instigated?
I think that's.
Or,
Instigated. It's not all luck.
well,
one's that
there's
funny.
been good times, there's been bad times.
Yeah, you've lived through the shit.
Well, I didn't like leaving a well-paid job and doing a job that was only paid half when I had 3 young children
Yeah.
and a wife who couldn't drive.
Yeah. So, okay, let's quantify that. When you left Eton to be what? A clergyman. There you are. Right.
To be the incumbent of Sturgessy. There you are.
Incumbent. Holy shit. Right. So
Yes.
you've gone from you've arguably the most prestigious school in the country to be a clergyman, an incumbent in a parish. Where you went? So you went. So first Cognac, nearly. Where was that? Where's the
Saint-Saulin-de-Connac.
Right, so
it was a village on the Gironde.
Bernard owned the bar as well when we first
yeah.
got there. He was a marvellous
Who?
man. No, Bernard. Not.
Oh, no, it's Crozan, that was.
Yeah, Crezan. Right, he was fantastic. Right, he stopped me personally getting my head chewed off by a massive quarry worker. And all he said was, "Non, je suis le patron." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, all right, whatever." So he did what you tell him. But then, you found a community, you found friends wherever you went. And I think that's part of your power. Should you be a superhero, your power is everywhere you go, you find a group of friends that react well to you, whether you like them in the end or not. I mean, I'm not wrong, am I? Chelsea, you had a group of people around you. You didn't like that much, right? But you had a group of people around you. Then you moved to Hedges' house, and there's people around there, and then you moved up to the St Thomas de Connacht, and you've got Matey with the big Labrador dog, and he was I think he was an ex-copper or something, all those guys, and Bill and all that, and the people around. But what I'm trying to say is that in your old age, your spectrum grew wider. The people you knew grew from nothing to everything. And wherever I went to visit you, there were people that I met that enjoyed interacting with you. Did you feel a certain freedom about that?
Oh yes, because I didn't have to play the role anymore. I wasn't
The role.
the role of being a clergyman, the role of being a teacher. I could just be me.
And here's a question: did you know what just being me was, or did you have to learn?
No idea. But when I was a young man, I read a lot about existentialism, and the idea of just existing wasn't possible because I had to be what I was in other people's eyes. I had to be conformist to what you might call a Jungian archetype, which means that you play the role of the good man, the knowledgeable man, the father, the uncle, though I was never an uncle, the husband. But once retired, I didn't have to play any of those roles. I could react to situations as they existed.
So honestly.
Yeah.
So instead of masking.
And freely.
Freely. So, a lot of my life has been masking to different things. Be it, no, I don't want to go for all that shit. But, I played a lot of roles. I've done a lot of things. And my biggest fear was coming out of all that. I don't know who to be.
Yeah. Well, there is an area of that. But it soon gets lost. Well, it did in my case.
Well, lost in what?
In pleasant activity on the whole.
Pleasant. How very pleasant.
Yeah, well,
Was there clement weather?
no.
Sorry.
For example, just having evenings with friends,
Yeah.
going out for expeditions, living near Bordeaux, going for wine tastings.
Do you know what? It was what I would describe as doing whatever the fuck you want, whenever the fuck you want.
Yeah, well, all right.
So you get to live the life that you do. But look, nobody has total freedom, right? But when you get to an age where there are less ties and there are less expectations of others, then you can become self.
Yeah.
And self is what is important.
Well, that's what I meant by what I said about the professional life. Having been a history teacher in a school where you're not being yourself, you're doing what the school tells you to.
Yeah.
But then you find yourself, at least I find myself, in the privileged position of having a national level library at my disposal, and people around me are really learned, like the conservators of the Chateau de Versailles, and you can just say, "What do you think of this?" and they'll tell you.
Honestly?
Yes.
You see...
No, not what do you think of what I've done, but
What do you think of this?
what do you think of this particular minister or of this particular situation? Why should France enter that war and not this one? Why were relations with Spain so bad? Why did the French government interfere in British politics at the time of the 1688 revolution? That sort of question, which are interesting professional questions.
Yeah.
And you find a professional satisfaction that simply being a teacher you could never have.
Can I ask, is there a juxtaposition in that? So instead of being the font of all knowledge for a group of children, you become the sponge for all the knowledge that you wanted to know.
Yes.
Therefore, you can formulate I want to say a Bible of knowledge. You can formulate the knowledge that you're looking for to directionalize what you're doing.
Yeah, that's very eloquently put. Yeah.
Oh, good heavens, who'd have thought it? At this stage in your life, okay, look, you're 86 years old, right? And I'm sorry to say this, but you do have 2 types of cancer which are in full remission at this point. You look stronger and you seem to be more erudite than when I last saw you.
Until I start to walk, yeah.
Yeah, well, we've all got a gammy hip, son.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the point which we must come to before we finish.
Yeah.
Is that illness puts itself into the mix.
Yeah.
There was that terrible moment in this very room when I'd had my treatment, my chemotherapy.
Yeah.
And I'd had immunotherapy before.
Yeah.
And the two reacted on each other, eventually to put me in remission. But before that, to drive me up the wall.
Right.
I was given a situation which this little flat turned into a hospital room. A French system called hospitalisation à domicile, being hospitalised at home, and the nurses come in several times a day, look after you. And I wasn't able to eat anything because of the operation I'd had. And so my food was injected into me, and that gave me blood poisoning.
Yeah.
And I was hallucinating. I've never played cricket in my life.
This is so weird.
And I'd been playing cricket, and I was out for a duck. And I thought, this is unjust. And I sat in the middle of the pitch and cried my eyes out. I was actually sitting there and crying my eyes out. And the pitch was imaginary and the pavilion was imaginary. And the nurse came in and found me and immediately rang the hospital, and the firemen arrived. This is what happens here. Great big blokes with red coats on who picked me up, put me in an ambulance and took me off.
Yeah.
Nobody told you where I was.
Yeah.
I went to a hospital called the Green Gates here, and they cured the blood poisoning in a fortnight.
Yeah.
And I came home as if nothing had happened.
Well, that's the fucking weird thing, right? I'm sat in my sister's house, Hedge, in London, right? With Sarah, my other sister, who's older, right? And I haven't seen any of them for months, right? And we're sitting there and we'd have lunch. I was driving, so we hadn't been drinking, and we were all chatting, and all of a sudden a phone rang. And then we hear this French woman go blah, 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 hospital. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay, so what's going on? And then Hedge took the phone, spoke to the woman, and basically what we were told was that you'd been found non-responsive in your flat. So Hedge, Sarah came to you, you were in the hospital, you were getting better. Nobody fucking told me that. So I phoned Hedge and I said, what the fuck's going on? And she said, yeah, he's all right. He's in the thing. And I went, what do you fucking mean he's all right? Isn't he dead? What? So I was completely confused. So I said, right. And I put my family in my car and I drove here. And I walked in the fucking house and you're not up. And it's about 1 o'clock, right? And you don't sleep. So normally you're awake. And I remember walking through the door and I said to Sid and Samuel, I said, just stand back a little bit, just in case. Oh, I was convinced you were dead. Right? And I thought, right, I don't know what to do here, so I'm going to be the big man about it because that's what I do. So I asked them to stay outside, and my wife got it and went, okay. Come on, Samuel, let's look at the bugs in the wall or whatever. And I walked in the fucking door, walked through, and you weren't here, and I knocked on that door, and you went, all right, mate, yeah. You said, all right, Jim, how's it going? Everything's all right? And I went, what do you mean everything's all right? What? And I was completely sideswiped by the fact that you were fine. You just decided to have a lie-in. Which when you're 80 odd, probably you're allowed to do. This is the thing. So the whole miscommunication was horrendous. But this is the trouble with you living in France and me living in wherever the hell I live now.
That's the complete opposite of the story when you had your kidney failure.
Yeah.
Your dad came back thinking you were on your
Well, that's the weird thing. Right. Do you remember? Yeah. Okay. So I'd called you and said, basically, I'm on the way out. And you came to visit as I was getting dressed to go home. And your exact reaction was, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm going home, all right. And then we had to have that conversation. So that's the weirdest thing. So you've done it for me, and I've done it for you, and we're all still here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just about.
Can I ask a question? And it's not the nicest of questions. When you face the inevitable, when you face what's coming, is there fear?
Yes,
Fear of what exactly?
losing control.
Not knowing what.
Not knowing what there is.
No. I just answered for you. What do you mean, losing control?
Well, how can I put it? Well, referring back to when your mother went into hospital for the last time, I was sort of standing by her bed, more or less gibbering,
Yeah.
and a senior nurse said, "This morning you were in charge of everything. This afternoon you're in charge of nothing." And I said, "You're right." And she said, "Well, you've got to spend some time getting used to that."
Yeah.
And so to apply that to myself, I can decide what to do, but maybe tomorrow I won't be able to. I can decide who to talk to. Maybe tomorrow I won't be able to.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't. Maybe there will be nothing. Maybe there will be what the religious people talk about, the pearly gates, the last judgment, and all that, which is frightening in itself. Even if you don't take it literally. I got interested at one stage in my life in out of the body experiences.
Right.
Particularly a man who was known politely as Spooky Higgins. He was a canon of Southwark, and he got very interested in the paranormal.
He was the. Oh, I can't think of the word.
You remember, he came to Haileybury once.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He
No.
came to another place.
He came. Yeah. It was must have been Wealth.
No, it wasn't. It was,
Before that.
yeah.
Okay.
And he said that he was an officer in the army at the Salerno landings. And while he was checking goods off, his mind was elsewhere, and a lorry backed into him and broke his hip, which had two results. One was that he was invalided straight away to Alexandria, so he missed the combat, which he was quite pleased about.
Yeah.
And the other one was that he had an out of the body experience, a near-death experience,
Yeah.
and he thought he was dead. And he went along a long, narrow corridor where there was light at the end, where there was a very impressive figure waiting for him, who then said, "Oh, we're not ready for you yet, go back." And that out of the body experience has been repeated by plenty of witnesses.
Yeah.
And well, is that going to happen? And the not knowing is the worst part.
Yeah.
And having known more or less what you're going to do tomorrow for the last nearly 90 years, to then have the fear of losing all that is worrying. And also the point is that now I can choose who I talk to. I can ring you, I can ring Lucy, I can ring the girls. Who am I going to ring then? Who am I going to meet then?
Yep. So is it the fear of the unknown?
Yeah.
You don't know what's coming.
Yeah, that's it.
That's because fundamentally all humans need to be in
Well,
some
yes, I mean,
semblance of control.
there's nothing unique in it.
No.
Well,
it's not about uniqueness. It's uniquenism. What the hell does that mean? It's
Well,
not about uniqueness. It's about the fact that this is your fear. But is it the human fear?
Yes. In whatsoever state I be, timor mortis conturbat me.
Yeah.
Whatever state I am, fear of death overwhelms me.
And that's, I mean, this is a cliche, but the one absolute is, if you're born, you die.
Yeah, death and taxes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Taxes. I'm due a tax rebate. Where the fuck is that?
Yeah, well,
Anyway, look, we have come to the end.
have we?
Yeah. It's been an hour, right?
Ah.
So look, one, let it be known that my respect for you is ever growing.
Thank you.
And my knowledge of how to deal with things and life comes from you, and I respect that.
Well, that's very kind.
Also, let me tell you that my friends are impressed enough with the dynamic between us that they will drive through the night and come and make a film with you, and that means a lot to me. So look, 50 in coping is about finding a way to cope with all things. My father is 86, but he's strong and he's living. Everyone in this world doesn't know what's going to happen. You may be consumed by some kind of religious fervour and think you do, but at the end of the day, everything is open. But don't waste your time in your life worrying about what you can't control. Live every day, find a way to cope with the things that hurt, the way you feel, the chemotherapy should you have that. Find a way to be strong for yourself, because other people will always pretend to be strong for you and back you. But at the end of the day, if you're true to yourself and strong to yourself, you can survive anything until the end. We'll see you next time.